Let's turn now to the wildfires in British Columbia. Premier David Eby is in the province's southern interior to tour some of the hardest hit areas and speak with residents. A short while ago, he announced a task force will examine mistakes made during this wildfire season. CBC Sarah Galashan has been following the story for us today, so let's talk a bit more about this task force.
Right. Well, so Natasha, looking at mistakes made, lessons to be learned from what's happened throughout an extraordinary wildfire season in British Columbia in 2023. It's going to be a task force made up of government officials working with and in conversation with frontline workers, perhaps from the wildfire service, as well as service providers who've been helping with the thousands of people who've been evacuated from their homes. But the ultimate goal of this task force is not just to look at wildfires, but all climate-related disasters and other disasters as well, in terms of best practices as to how to deal with, say, mass evacuations. In the last month, we have seen tens of thousands of BC residents forced to leave their homes because of the wildfires, and hundreds of them losing their homes to what are really fast-moving flames. That's certainly what we saw play out outside of West Kelowna. Flames moving in so quickly, people with very little time to leave. So what are the lessons that might be learned from things like that, and how quickly might we be able to deploy resources, and were they deployed fast enough? Premier David Eby spoke in Kamloops about this before leading on a tour of the Shuswap region, which is, of course, another region that was devastated by wildfires this summer. Here's what he said.
The goal here with the task force is that we get those independent voices outside of government that assist us in identifying what we can be doing better, but that work is integrated with the public service, with the wildfire service, with the emergency response teams, so that we can put those recommendations, those findings to work right away. We don't have the luxury of time between emergencies right now in British Columbia.
That point he's making there about luxury of time. We're right now mid-September, and this is traditionally when we start to see an end to the imminent threat of wildfires. We know this season that threat is expected to persist through into October, but rains are also expected. The issue is, and while rain is welcome because of the drought situation in British Columbia throughout, we have a large swaths of burned forests, of scorched earth, and that kind of ground is more susceptible to flooding, potential landslides. And Natasha, of course, a lot of this has happened in areas that is close to communities, close to major highways. So there's some anticipation of potentially what disaster might come as a result of all that rain.
And when we talk about BC, so often, Sarah, you and I are talking about one disaster or another. So what lessons might be learned from this one?
Right. Well, there's been some big ones in British Columbia over a number of years. In 2021, we had that atmospheric river, and that was devastating to agriculture land in the Fraser Valley. It was devastating to highway infrastructure as well. As far as wildfires go, 2023, extraordinary, has shattered a lot of records. But if you look at the last, say, 7 wildfire seasons, there's 3 of them that you could count that you've seen more than 10,000 square kilometers of scorched land as a result of it. Really, it goes back to 2003, 20 years ago. There was an extraordinary wildfire season. We were told at that time that it was a 1 in 100 year event, and clearly that was not the case. But back when that happened, there was a similar sort of task force that was formed, and there was a report that came as a result of that. There have been some critics as to whether or not all of the suggestions, recommendations from that actually were adopted. In terms of what lessons could be learned, what has caused the 2023 wildfire season, David Eby, the Premier, did talk about this. This is what he suggested were some of the circumstances that have created what we've seen play out here.
The lack of humidity, the lack of rainfall has meant our frontline firefighters have seen fire tornadoes, have had to evacuate camps that they had set up. They've seen the spread of embers well beyond their traditional 2-kilometer radius. The threat is remarkable and distinct this year from previous fire seasons. And so getting that feedback from our frontline firefighters about what they've seen, about assumptions that may have been made previously that are no longer true, is going to be critically important.
In other words, recommendations that have been made based previously on other wildfire seasons are maybe not still best practices given the severity of climate issues that British Columbia is dealing with. And so that really is at the heart of what they want to look at with this task force. Natasha?
CBC's Sarah Galashan, thank you.